Hey y'all, Jason here with Dirt Race Life. So I wanted to catch you up. I've run a couple of races. We're running tonight over at Poplar Bluff Motorsports in Poplar Bluff, Missouri. This is probably our last race of the year, and it's a mix. It's like crate racing versus power eye. It's pretty much a run what you brung. But we hadn't had a chance to come to Poplar Bluff this year, so we wanted to get over here before it was over. So me and Kim and Rachel are headed over here. Before we get to the track at Poplar Bluff and get going there, I want to show y'all some footage. We went and ran a crate racing special. It was $5,000 to win at Thunderhill. That's in Summertown, Tennessee. It's about 38 cars that entered that, and we did make the big show, but just barely, and didn't do a whole lot. We started like 19th place. We ended up finishing about 16th place. We're gonna cut in here. I want to show you some footage on the Thunderhill run that we made last weekend, and then we're gonna see what we can do tonight at Poplar Bluff. So y'all stick around. Going 310, big race tonight.
Right front shot.
Thanks for coming.
Hey, I had to come listen. It was on my list.
Heck yeah.
It was on my list, so.
And don't be brake checking. Y'all start your pace on the back stretch and maintain it all the way. Don't get to 3 and then jam on the brakes and accordion everybody else up. All you're doing is tearing up the guys behind you.
Y'all, I got the worst luck ever. Went out for hot laps right off the bat. Check this out. Man, I am telling you, I must have caught a rock just perfectly right in that sucker. Anyway, I'm gonna get what footage I can. Kim's got this GoPro. She's gonna have it up in the stands. She's gonna try to get some footage there. We'll see what we get.
John Jackson in the number 4 out of Coil into the series.
I tell you, if it wasn't for bad luck, there'd be no luck at all. So broke the GoPro in the car, of course. That messed me up. I'm still going to run it because I have no idea what that footage will look like. If I can incorporate some of it, I will. But then Kim over here, she messed up and the battery went down. I didn't know more than get started in my heat race and the battery went down. Okay, so here's the deal. I made the feature. This is the first big race because this is like $5,000 to win, and every position in the feature pays extra money, all kind of sponsorships, everything, and it's a lot of fast guys here tonight, and I made the feature. And Kim is going to have a fresh battery for the feature tonight to do that, and so hopefully we will get it all done because I made the feature and super excited about that. It's about time this car made its way into shows because dadgum, I have been fighting it all summer long. I'm ready to see this thing do something. put them to work while I headed the driver's meeting. All right, so yeah, so finished 16th on that race and really enjoyed Thunderhill. That is the most bank I've ever been on. It just felt like it was straight up on the corners and everything. But what I was going to tell you, I knew that I was going to be running all of that bank. I'd already been told, takes more spring, takes more spring. And I've been suspecting this. I dropped all the way down to a 550 on the right front, a 650 on the left front. And then I went back up to a 750 on the right front with a 650 on the left front. And the car got better. And what it was, I knew that I needed to be softer going into the turn, or that I needed the car down more, and I had softened spring. But then I had also went way up on rebound. I went from a 500 rebound on the right front on the shock up to 800, and I went from 100 pounds of rebound on the left front up to 300 pounds. And so I tied the whole front of the car down. Well, when I did, I should have went back up on spring rate. And so I went back to my original setup, went back to 850 on the right front with a medium rubber in there, and put the 750 on the left front with a soft rubber in it. And car just drove great at Thunderhill. Just didn't have enough motor, but car drove great. So I left it alone. We're gonna run Poplar Buff tonight. I brought a knife to a gunfight, I ain't gonna lie. It's a run what you run class here. Good dirt tires. I just got my H500s on. You know, it's everything under the sun. It's full roller motors, you know, small blocks at 421, 434. So it's some big boys I'm gonna be running with tonight. But it was my chance to run this track this weekend, and I wanted to get that in while I could. It was my only shot at getting to come up here this year. So let's see what we do.
All right, first off, I want to start off by thanking everybody, each and every one of you that's raced with us, first timers coming here tonight. I want to thank everybody coming out and racing with us, making this season what it has been. We are not going to tolerate any rough driving whatsoever. I know it's last night, but if there is intentional, not just hard racing activity, because that's going to happen, it always does. If there's anything that myself or my officials consider was intentional rough driving, there will be consequences and suspension to face the start of 2023 season.
hold a light to them. Track was dry slick. I tried to drop to the outside and hit some brown up there, but I just didn't have nothing for them boys. We'll do all we can for the feature and see what we can do. Hopefully it's just so slick that our setup is good and that lets us go to the front. All right, that's coming up. In that race, yes, I was last. Definitely a knife in a gunfight, so to speak, but that's okay. We wanted to go to Poplar Bluff. It was our one opportunity. One of my great sponsors, he had sent me the flyer and he said, hey, won't you come? You know, I'd like to hang out with you and stuff, because he lives in that area. And we went up there, was glad I did. I've been working on my setup, and so it was a debate, you know, do I go and change the asphalt pull-offs, or do I leave the H500s on? And I opted to leave the H500s on because I just changed my setup, and I think it was really loud when I was saying this earlier, so I want to go back through it here in a minute, and I want to give you, don't run off y'all, full update on everything planned is coming. But anyway, so we took the car, we ran it. It was Power Eye and crate racing, so like the Power Eye, I think it's just open motor as long as it's still with a 2-barrel. A lot of tire options that are actual dirt tires and asphalt pull-offs. And boy, I tell you, they were rolling. when we were running in it, the first 5 or 6 laps, I was really losing ground to the group. And then somewhere around lap 5 or 6, my tires started warming up on that really slick track, started working better, and I was just really started focusing on rolling through the corner and trying to, you know, enter the corner the correct way, the way that the car should be driving through the corner. And got the car slowed down, and if I could get the car to roll in and not, you know, not come in too hot, because it's so slick that if I came in too hot into the corner, you know, I would just blow through and scrub off my tires. Once I got it rolling and everything, car was great. Car started holding lap with the rest of them. I could tell, you know, I was no longer losing ground to the cars in front of me, you know, once I would get that corner rolling right and stuff. And so I want to talk about the setup a little bit. So we have made full circle. We started out with this car with a 750 and an 850 spring on the front of this car. And I think I was running the 850 on the left front and the 750 on the right front. And we knew we weren't getting the car down as much as we wanted to. It wasn't getting over on the nose as much as we wanted. And we started, you know, we were looking at it from a standpoint of, okay, this thing needs softer springs. Regardless of what everybody else is running, I need to get this nose down. It's just not doing what I need it to do. So I put a 550 on the right front, a 650 on the left front, got all the way down that soft. Front end was getting down on the car. Still didn't feel like that I was where I needed to be. Wasn't quite there, was better. But I got with Mr. J. Neal. I was talking to him, asking about the shocks. I asked him, I said, you know, can I go to a stronger rebound on the right front? And so I went from a 500-pound rebound on the right front to an 800-pound rebound. In numbers, that would be like going from a 14 to like a 21 on the rebound number. And then I turned around, and on the left front, I tied it down. I did have 100 pounds of rebound on the left front. I went up to 300 pounds of rebound on the left front. And in that process, the car started getting more consistent and more stable in the turn, but I was blowing through my front end, bent up a tie rod on my right front, you know, getting into the frame and stuff, and I'd get into the rough with it and everything. The rubbers on the springs weren't enough to hold the car. And so then finally, when I went to Thunderhill and ran the Memorial race the weekend before this race, I had went back to an 850 and a 750 with the 850 on the right front, the stronger spring on the right front, but with those aggressive tie-down shocks on there, and that's where I should have been. I'm not saying it's exactly right, but it's close. And it was really good there, but there was a ton of banking in the track. The car was getting a lot more side bite on entry, rolling in. The right front was holding the car. It was hooking in. I was getting that bite, and then I was able to apply throttle really quickly, and the car was driving off, and the car was turning. And I'm like, wow. I went soft on the springs when from the get-go, I should have been going more aggressive on my tie-down on my shocks. It needed timing help. It didn't need spring change. It needed the timing worked on. And so I missed the boat on the front end. So there's a lot of races there where I could have finished a lot better this season, you know, if I had really realized that on the front end. But it's a learning process. And so where I'm at now with the car, you know, is with the 850 on the right front and the 750 on the left front. 800 pounds to tie down on the right front and 300 pounds to tie down on the left front. 200-pound spring and the 175-pound spring on the rear of the car with the 200-pound on the right side of the car. I think, is that right? Yeah. I think probably I'm ending the season with the car the best as far as it driving. Part of that too is me learning the car and really learning how to drive a cool car and stuff. But like on the laps, I'm back there and I'm in open air by myself last night, you know, and I started really focusing on sweeping that car out to the wall and then cutting across that apex as tight as I could through that center. And when I would smoothly brake and then lift off the brake as I rolled through the corner, the car was rotating and rolling. I wasn't having to kick the rear end out. I'd pick the throttle up and the car would just drive off the corner. And so that's telling me when I'm able to do that, I'm like, yeah, that's a balanced setup. It could use a little bit of tuning somewhere, but I don't have the experience with the chassis and enough races under my belt to know exactly what direction to go with. So this car is going to stay on this setup and this package. And I will say this, I did go up significantly on my left rear bite last night. I went to that race at about 250 pounds of left rear bite, and I cranked in a ½ inch on that left rear jack last night before the feature. I said, I'm fixing to put some bite in this car because it is not tight at all, and it's going to need it on this track. And so, you know, because I wanted the car to rotate in, you know, just off the gear, pulling it down without me having to really put in rear brakes and kick the rear end out. And it delivered for me. Likely, I am at 300 pounds of left rear bite. I could be a little north of it. I'm probably going to leave it where it's at and not touch any of the jack bolts. That way I can put the thing back on the scales before it's over and find out my exact numbers. But if you stuck with me this long, let's talk about updates. All right, so we got a lot going on this fall. We're going to get into some of the video type that I really like to make. You know, I love making the shop videos. I love making the videos, you know, the fabrication and how to build the mousetrap and what we're doing and, you know, what we're changing and everything. So the engine in this car, this is my little factory stock engine. So this is a little Vortec 350 that has got a hydraulic cam in it that will pull like 17 inches of vacuum. It only has like 490 lift, 495 lift is all it's got. It's a great little motor, but it should not be in a crate racing car. It definitely should not be trying to run against power out. But it's beautiful for factory stock. Rachel has asked to drive my Camaro. She wants to run a car. She wants to race. It's been one of those things that she wants to get off her bucket list in her life and everything. She's really sharp, really smart girl. I think she's going to do great. So we're going to pull this engine out. We're going to tear it down together. This thing has probably got between 3 and 4 years of runtime on it. I built it 5 or 6 years ago, and it's always been my backup engine, but I've really been running hard the last 2 years, and it's worn. I mean, it's there. You know, I just changed the oil in it, and I was looking, and I've got a real fine bearing material that I'm seeing in my oil and stuff, seeing in my oil filters. So we're going to pull it down. We're going to do it together, go through it. We know we're going to put rings and bearings in it, but figure out, you know, can we polish the crank? Do we need to have the crank turned? You know, do we need to bore it and put more pistons in it, or is it good to go with just a hone and run? But we're going to figure that out together, get that engine back to that original new condition and everything. We're going to get the Camaro back in here. We're going to put that engine, like a 20-pound flywheel, a regular clutch. We've got to figure out how to set up a throw-out bearing in it, and a 3-speed transmission. And let's see, it's on composite springs. We're probably going to switch it back to steel springs. And then we have to change the whole cockpit up on that car because, like, Rachel is like half what I weigh. No, I'm not going to say what she weighs. I like my life. But she's like half what I weigh. So we got to figure out, when we put her in the car, obviously I got to move the pedals, I got to move the steering wheel, you know, we got to reposition all that stuff. But then also we've got to figure out what that means as far as the balance of the car. Like my Camaro, man, it drove beautifully. When I parked the car, I mean, it was a great car. I don't think it could compete on these big crate racing races and stuff. But in a factory stock class, that car is unbeatable. And so, you know, what does it mean to put a person that weighs half as much? You know, we're going to relocate the battery, figure out what to do with the lead, how to change things around, how to make the car work well for her. And then that whole process in the spring, we're going to take her to as many tests and twos as we can, because she never drove a car before on a racetrack. And that is going to be new for me too. So to go from just the seat of my pants, what I feel, making changes, versus I'm watching, and then she's trying to describe, but she doesn't have any experience. So we have to go through that, her learning, figuring out what to change on the car, seeing the results on the track. I know there's a lot of y'all out there like this, that you raced and you got tons of experience, but how do you translate that to a son or daughter that now you're putting in a car, and you got to teach them, and then also you've got to watch and figure out what to do to the car, because they don't know what to ask for. And that's new to me, so I'm really excited about that. We're going to do that. Of course, the new motor is going into this car. We're going to pull all the sheet metal off this car. We're going to go through, see what's worn, see what needs to be fixed. We got some changes to make. My tubing that goes to my front towers, my engine will come in and out, and I can pull my valve covers off. I didn't think about changing valve springs. I was changing valve springs on this thing this year mid-season, and my valve spring compressor was just a direct conflict with our tubing on the front. So we got to do something there. We're going to figure that out. It's a couple more things we're going to change on this car, but we're going to run it next year with our 350 that we're building. And that motor right there, my machinist that I got my block from and stuff, he really wasn't comfortable cutting the new bow tie heads because I needed like my intake face milled on them and stuff and everything. He's like, Jason, I don't know, if my equipment and everything, if it's going to do the level of work that you need done here. I said, that's fine. It's all good. I reached out to a race engine builder here in West Tennessee that several of my friends of mine love him. But I reached out to him and asked him if he'd be willing to help me, to get my mill working done and for the engines. And he's like, yep, holler at me. I'll help you with it. Like I said, I'm just getting started. Just, messaged him and asked if he'd help me. And he said, yes, I'll help you out. So super appreciate that. During 2023, we're going to run this girl, but we're going to get the jig down and we're going to start our metric build. I'm real happy with the success with it. I'm real happy with where I'm at. But if you've watched and you've been with me from the very beginning, I said this, for those of y'all, you'll remember hearing this, every car I build is different. Every car I build is an evolution of me learning and how to better apply it and build that next better mousetrap. Having built this, there's a couple things that I've learned. One thing for sure, the swing weight is most called at the polar moment, where that I put the fuel cell in front of the rear end and I have absolutely no weight behind the rear of this car. I've got that front cut down where there's nothing out in front of the front tires. That process has built probably one of the most stable, unspinnable cars I have ever drove. This thing is fantastic. I don't know how many times I've had somebody just slam into the left rear or the right rear of this car, and it's like this car, I just feel a little, like a tap on the shoulder, and it never comes out of its track, and I attribute it to that. Barry Daniels, he won the race I was in last night. It's a great driver, got lots of cars, builds all his own stuff too. And but anyway, in the heat race, he was behind me and he was just wearing out the back of my car. I didn't even know who it was. And then Kim and Rachel, like, that was Barry back there. He was getting frustrated with you. You need to get out of the way. And anyway, but he was just wearing me out back here. And honestly, it felt like somebody was just poking on his shoulder. I mean, the car would just never get knocked out of place. And I attribute that to not having the swing weight, not having any weight outside of my wheels, and that includes the fuel cell. And so the big thing in 2023, we're going to get that metric frame up on that jig right there, but we've got to figure out how do we put a fuel cell in position on a 108-inch wheelbase like we did this 112. It's a couple of y'all I've talked to at the racetracks, that are like looking at building your next metric car, and you're like, how do you get that fuel cell to fit in there? I don't know, guys. I did it on a 112-inch, and so now we got to figure out, I've learned that from this car. This concept I had is fantastic for how it drives and what it delivers on. But now I got to figure out how to recreate that in a 108 instead of in a 112. And I love the idea of that. So we're going to get it on the jig. We're going to figure it out together. That's going to be going on during 2023. So I'm kind of getting this plan together, for what the future holds. Really excited about it because I love the shop work. I love, the fabrication and the figuring out the design and how to get things to work and everything. So this is a great car. I love it, but I've learned a lot from it. There's several things I'm going to take from this car. And I want to build a car too. I think I can get even better on the roll cage. So I've got double posts on every corner. And this is 1.5" 095 DOM tubing. This is a safe chassis. But here's the question. Is it safe enough for me to run 140 mile an hour at Bristol? I don't know. It's like, really, I'm thinking about it, and I'm like, if I'm going to build a car that I could go and run a half-mile track, be running like, a 486 gear, a 514 gear, and those kind of speeds, Do I need to design my next car that's evolved for me specifically looking at that level of speed with the structure, that shell around me that is indestructible, and then collapse zones out from that on purpose to absorb energy and stuff? I think my next design, I need to be taking that into account. So I'm really wanting to build this next car for that reason also, because I think I can get even better. And let's see what else. If you stuck with me this long, now you've got the full rundown on the next year on videos. And if you're not subscribed, subscribe, folks. This is great stuff. See you next time.